Well, welcome back everyone to the last session of the day for the Utility Solutions Conference. My name is Mike McGee. This is going to be, like I said, our final session. The title of this session is Solutions Through Collaboration, a Case Study. Joining us as presenters this afternoon is Phil Wiegers with EGW, Andy Multerer with MBW, and Marc Chapman with Atmos Energy, retired from Atmos Energy. We're having a little bit of trouble getting Marc on onto the into the room today, so that may not happen. So we'll just stay tuned for him. But we really want to thank everyone for taking all of our presenters for taking some time to share with us. As everyone is probably already aware at this point, we are giving away yet another door prize in this session. The door prizes are sponsored, and we would like to thank all of our sponsors for the contributions that benefit these sessions and for their overall support of this week's events. This session's door prizes are sponsored by MBW. There will be 2 winners in this session, and they'll be receiving a $100 Amazon gift card. So good luck to everybody for that. The drawing will be held directly following the session. Here in just a minute, I'll properly introduce our panelists, but first I want to go over a few of the ground rules for the session. We're bringing this conference to you live via Microsoft Live Teams events. For those of you who are familiar with Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Google Meet, you'll see some similarities to the virtual meeting rooms we're all used to, but you'll also see some differences as well. 2 main ones. This works as a live stream, essentially. We can see the attendees, but we cannot actually see your faces. We just know you're here. The other main difference is that while you can hear us, we cannot hear you, so there's no need to mute your microphone. I can't mute you. Don't even try to talk because we won't know if you did. The good news is, though, however, you can interact with us via the live chat function. You'll notice a little chat icon on the top of your screen. It's the little one with a question mark in the middle of the bubble. If you click that, you'll open up a Q&A chat box and you'll be able to submit questions. As questions come up through the session, we would encourage you to submit them to us. I will be responsible for collecting your questions as they're submitted, and then I'll relay them on to the presenters whenever we transition on to the Q&A portion of the session. Just as a side note, submitting your questions will not in any way cause any kind of interruptions. So please feel free to submit those questions as they come up, and I'll take care of the rest. Okay, so that is a wrap on the ground rules. At this time, let's introduce our panel. We'll start off with Andy Multerer. Andy's first 8 years at MBW were spent training, doing sales, and working with the utility distributors and utilities themselves to uncover new product solutions for the industry. This was a demo-heavy time with good experience in the field, working firsthand with the utilities on job sites to demo and train on equipment. The most successful new product during that time was the VEU, or the Vapor Extraction Unit, a result of the ideal partnership between a utility expert with a vision for the outside-of-the-box solution, a utility distributor who was integral within the ability and able to connect with all the right parties to develop such a product, and MBW, the manufacturer will design and manufacturing capabilities to create a finished product to the specifications provided by all involved. And next we have Marc Chapman. It looks like we might have gotten him into the room. Marc Chapman is retired from Atmos Energy. He retired in 2016 after a long career there, as well as with TXU Electric and Lone Star Gas. He served in a variety of operational roles during his tenure with the company, starting as a construction worker and was a director of compliance when he retired. He also owned and operated a pipeline construction business for several years. Marc had the original idea of the Vapor Extraction Unit back in 2004. He and his wife now live in East Texas, where they are employing their retirement with the children and their grandchildren. And last but far from least, we have Phil Wiegers. Phil is the founder and CEO of EGW Utilities, Inc. Prior to starting EGW, he worked for manufacturers and an integrated supplier in a variety of roles and related to sales, product development, and management. He started EGW in 2001, 20 years ago, when he saw the need for a solution-oriented partner for utilities in the gas and water industries. In his 32 years, Phil has earned a reputation, 32-year career. He's not just 32 years old. I want to make that clear. He has earned a reputation as a solutions provider and problem solver and helping utilities to better serve their customers. So now, without further ado, I will hand this over to Phil and let him take the helm. Phil?
Mike, thank you for that introduction. Appreciate it very much. And thank you to my co-presenters for being here today, and for all of you who are online with us. Thanks for spending some time with us. This session is really about how three partners collaborated on an idea to make it come to fruition. And we're going to talk about how those three partners collaborated, that being a utility in Atmos Energy, represented here today by Marc Chapman, regional distributor, EGW, represented by myself, and then manufacturer of heavy equipment, being MBW, represented by Andy Multerer. However, before I do that, I want to talk just for a minute about the case study, the product that this case study is about, which is the vapor extraction unit, or VEU. The VEU, what it is basically it's a vacuum to remove residual gas from either under the ground or under pavement, primarily in metro areas. It also is being used, and one of the original uses was for pinpointing leaks under pavement in in metro areas. So fundamentally what it is, it's a gas vacuum. It has a hose with probes, so the ground, whether it be cement, asphalt, or soil, has to be penetrated. The probes are inserted, the vacuum is started, and then that mixture of gas and air is brought back through the device and expelled to the atmosphere. However, it's being monitored the whole time to make sure that the mixture of air and gas does not become explosive. So this photo that I have is the first unit, one of the first units at least, that was ever produced. This photo is one of those units with a single hose, which was the original design. And you'll notice there are probes which have been put through the cement. That's in Dallas, Texas, so probably some pretty thick cement. Rock drilled through that cement to get down to the soil level to remove residual gas. And then finally, this is what the vapor extraction unit looks like today. You can see it's much different than it looked like when it was originally introduced back in the early 2000s. And this is what vapor extraction units look like when I like them most, when they're completed and being shipped out to our customers. So let me transition. We've got Marc Chapman with us today. Marc is an old friend of ours. We've been doing business together for a long time. And Marc was the person that had the original idea for the vapor extraction unit back in 2004. So Marc, I would like to ask you to tell your story behind your original idea for the VEU and why you decided to reach out to EGW initially as your partner.
Okay. This kind of all started, like Phil said, back in 2004. I had a situation in Fort Worth, Texas. I was director of operations in the Metroplex for Dallas-Fort Worth at the time, over construction. And we had a low pressure leak over in Fort Worth that apparently had been leaking for some time. And once we got the leak pinpointed and got it fixed, we just had tons and tons of residual gas trapped in the ground. Well, previously the only technology we had available was the Ventura tube type devices where you had to hook an air compressor and blow it across a Ventura tube to suck the gas out of the ground. So I knew that was going to take basically forever. We had recently purchased several vac trucks. So a thought ran through my mind, well, why don't we get the vac trucks over here, a couple of them, and start seeing if we can suck this gas out of the ground. And it worked. But the thing that had me really concerned was the safety factor associated with that, and then the size of the vac trucks themselves. From a safety perspective, I didn't know the gas air mixture that was being sucked through and into that huge vacuum tank. So that kind of got the ball rolling for me. And I had remembered from a previous demonstration that EGW and Phil had presented to Atmos Energy at the time, was they had a machine called a Put It Back, which was a very small, compact mini vacuum unit. And that mini vac unit made me think, could we redesign that technology into fitting into a vapor extraction unit? So I called Phil. Phil came over and I explained to Phil what I wanted to do. And I said, Phil, what's paramount here is two things. It's got to be mobile, small, compact, with a lot of vacuum volume. And the other thing, and I said, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to plant the seed with you, is we need a safety device built into the vacuum technology so that we can monitor what's coming out of the ground and adjust it so that we never have an explosive gas air mixture. So Phil took a ton of notes, and that really is what got the ball rolling on the whole thing. So Phil, I hope I kind of explained a little bit about how we got it going.
Mark, you did, and I appreciate that. Also appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate that phone call many years ago. I want to tell you, folks, a little bit about what I did with that information once Mark and I had our initial meeting. My former business partner, Jeff Burnett, was an engineer. So I asked Jeff to work with me and with Mark on this project. And so we reviewed those notes that I so feverishly took that day that Mark had called me. We then had several both telephone calls and in-person calls with Mark. And then Jeff reached out to Andy Multerer at MBW, who was at that time the utility sales manager and our primary contact there. Of course, today Andy's the president of MBW. He immediately involved his R&D department and his engineering department. And where we had the heads up or an advantage on this was exactly what Mark said earlier. They had a product which is no longer manufactured, but it was called the Put It Back. And that, as Mark said earlier, was kind of the foundational technology that we used to work with to develop the EU back in 2004. So we worked together between the three parties, the utility, EGW and MBW, and eventually came up with what we felt was going to be a successful initial product to try out in the field. So as I recall, Mark said, well, I want to get 5 of those for the metro operations, but let's get 1 and we will bring it in and give it a go and see how it works. And then we'll, if everything works fine, we'll get the additional 4 units. I would say that it took about 5 to 6 months to get those initial units built and in place, which if you think about it, really is quite quick. Again, that goes back to having the right manufacturer that we chose and the fact that they had a product that they could alter to get there. Those initial units were all painted Atmos blue. They had gasoline engines. They were skid mounted, but most importantly, they had a gas monitoring device on them, which was one of Mark's initial desires and really demands that that unit have. And in addition to that, it also had an audible and a visual alarm so that with the VEU being running, before the engine would shut down, which was one of the design features, the audible and visible alarm would go off so that the guys who were operating it, if they were away from the unit or if they couldn't hear it or in their truck or something, they could be alarmed before the unit shut off. So once we delivered these units, the work wasn't done by any means. Mark had a couple of his best crews working with these units. Those guys were very creative. They worked with us, and in turn, we worked with MBW to develop a variety of accessories that went with the unit. Different types of for example, different types of road conditions that we had, or different places where residual gas was being found, such as in manholes, where we developed a manhole kit. We also developed multiple probes and different types of probes and things like that, just to mention a few. It was certainly a collaborative effort between all the parties, including Mark's technicians. And I just want to add in here that back in 2006, Pipeline and Gas Journal actually did an article on Mark, the VEU, and this same process, and we're all very proud to be a part of that as well. So Andy, if you would take it from here and talk about the success of the VEU over the years and some of the improvements and developments that have taken place after the original design was completed, and maybe some things you have planned for the future, that would be great.
Andy, you're on mute.
All right, can you hear me now, Mike?
We can, absolutely, yes.
All right, good.
You're ready to rock and roll.
All right, and is my presentation sharing?
We can see your presentation.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. Sorry about that. And thanks, Phil and Mike and everyone for having MBW be part of this. I'd like to just kind of go over a little bit about who MBW is and why this project was so important to us. You know, our purpose is a better job site experience. And for years, that meant compaction, concrete finishing. And then probably around the 1990s, we got pretty heavily involved with a lot of utilities and saw an opportunity on a lot of those job sites to bring new innovative equipment to the job site. And what we're really good at MBW is building innovative and bulletproof construction equipment. Who we are is an American manufacturing company. We're up in Slinger, Wisconsin, about a 100,000 square foot facility, and we have full R&D and testing capabilities as well. A little bit of our from concept to production, and we use much of this with the VEU. We have 5 basic stages. You know, we ID the problem and help solve the problem based off of our core strengths. We need to make sure that we're the right partner, and when it comes to generally a smaller machinery, like nothing like a skid steer, but something below that, that's where our core strengths are. From there, we must identify what the product needs to do for the customer and then start to discuss potential concepts. We define performance requirements and determine if those concepts can meet these. Defining the performance requirements is probably one of the most important steps we can take, because we really need to identify exactly what the customer is looking for, so that when we go to a prototype and start testing, we don't go down the wrong path. From there, we finalize the design, we create prototypes, and then we test, revise, etc. This process can take anywhere from just a few months if we hit it right away, to sometimes it takes 2 years, because when you're going through all that prototype, it's not just testing for quality and function, but also getting it in the hands of the right type of partner to make sure that it's meeting all those requirements. From there, we pilot build, retest again, and then hand off to production. All of our production is also in Wisconsin, and at that point, then we hit the line. Just a little bit more about some of our engineering capabilities. We use SolidWorks, which is a pretty interesting program because it allows us to test on the computer before we actually go and start making our prototype units. This would help identify stress points, weaknesses, all the fit up. And then from there, we use a 3D printer for a lot of our initial kind of proof of concept. What we've also found is that 3D printing, which is a plastic mold, is also a fantastic way to get initial concept castings. So you use the plastic mold to build like a sand casting, and then you can get pretty much close to full production quality prototype metal castings that you can then throw on a prototype unit, which is often 1 to 3 units. Here's just a sample of one of our most recent projects. It was a wet screed for concrete. And to get it, what was so interesting about it was we entered a partnership where we had access to the M18 battery platform from Milwaukee Tool. And I just wanted to point it out because, we took each unit over 100 hours of endurance field testing. And that was a big part of making sure that those prototypes are really ready to go before we even thought about doing a pilot build. So that's a little bit about MBW. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the vapor extraction unit now. So applications, kind of repeating some of the things that Marc and Phil may have touched on, is to evacuate natural gas from below the ground in a safe manner. It's to pinpoint leaks in an area with a widespread migration, and to respond to emergency leaks and control migration. One of the things we've really found that's interesting about the application on these with the vapor extraction unit is every utility is a little bit different. Soil types across the country, in other parts of the world vary. A little bit more sand, a little bit more clay, a wetter climate, a drier climate, it's all different. And what we really focus on is training and helping everybody understand how the vapor extraction unit, and then we hand it off to the professionals who really, it's the utilities that really understand how the gas moves through their unique situation. And then watching the vapor extraction unit really take what the utilities already know and then take it to another level in terms of productivity is just fascinating to watch. This was just a little bit more on the history. Existing solutions really offered no monitoring along with poor performance. The VEU allows not only the productivity to get better, but it gives you kind of a real live idea of what's coming out of the ground. So often as you're running the unit, if you're stuck at say 5% LEL for quite some time, that means you're still pulling a lot of gas out. And it's only when you get down to like a 1% is it really worth going and checking those bar holes to identify your pinpoint. This is a quote from Marc quite some time ago. And it was, what would take the old tube type extraction machine a month, we can now accomplish in a few days. And Marc, I've always loved this quote because it kind of sets the right expectations. And many times at VEU, you'll go onto a job site and you just really don't know how much gas is in the ground. If it's a lot of gas, if it's covering a wider area and say there's a bunch of clay in the ground, it may take a long time to get that gas out, or it might go very quickly. Either way, you have to compare it on site with what tools they were using, and you'll see the great productivity gains. Here's some more pictures of those R&D units that Phil was showing earlier. So a little bit more about the VEU. We use a liquid-cooled diesel engine. That way you can get maximum runtime out of it. It generates 850 CFM, so we are moving a ton of air. When you're moving a ton of air, there's two ways to look at it, is how much air you're moving and how powerful you're moving that air. You need both, because pulling air through a tough environment that's maybe more of a saturated ground, you need that suction power. But when you think about how much gas might be in the ground, you also have to be moving a lot of it. That's why you can't have just a small, super powerful pump. You need the combination of high CFM flow along with the power to pull, which is kind of a unique situation sometimes. And it operates at 80 to 90 decibels. We've done a lot over the years to try to reduce that as much as possible. The incorporated safety feature is that safety monitor. The way I like to describe it is it ensures that you never have 100% LEL moving through the entire system. It sets off an alarm. This is the factory set at 35%. That allows the operator to make their adjustments. At 50% LEL, it shuts the machine down. So when someone asks me what happens when you have 100% LEL moving through the system, the answer is you don't, because the safety setup wouldn't allow it. And the other factor is that even if you did somehow manage to get a certain amount of gas into the system, the VEU is set up to pretty much just be a pass-through. There is no collecting type of tank, so you would have a very minimal amount internally at any time. The air bypass valve is part of what really makes it work, is that you can literally have one of those probes on top of a gas line leaking gas. You can be pulling 100% gas out of that gas line, but with that bypass valve, you can have it all the way open. That way you're inducing enough air to blend that natural gas level low enough that you can move it through the system safely. And we've had that. We've had it where we've dropped probes right on top of the leak, and it's kind of crazy. It's like, wow, you're right there. There's a ton of gas moving out of that leak, but we can still move it out of the system because we've blended it down so much. It's a customer focused product, and what really we mean by that is MBW, we're great at designing, we're great at figuring this stuff out, but we really need to be able to listen and work with the customers on it. So some of the things that we've improved through the years is the easy fill gas tank. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but it really is. Keyless push button start, control board cover, high flow probes, and a built-in silencer. Let me just look at this. Improves sensor connections, high intensity LED display with LEL percentage, and an improved control panel, which you can see right here. So basically all of those improvements were customer requests over the years. It's the machine's working great, but it would be really nice if it was a little brighter, or it would be really nice if we can do everything from one single spot. And that's what the control panel really allows, is for ease of use. You have your bypass valve on the left, you can see it. The LED lights kind of in the middle of the screen will actually go up and down based on your gas level that's going through. That part won't actually give you a number, but it gives you enough to understand if you need to adjust that bypass valve. Some of the major cost savings on the vapor extraction unit that we've learned from utilities as we work with them is decreased amount of dry holes, increased efficiency of extraction, minimizes your exposure to the public. You can get on the job site and more importantly off the job site faster. Smaller excavations and less road cuts, accurate pinpointing of leaks, reopening of business in a safer environment. Here's just a couple pictures of it in action. You can see that these are in the road. When you're working with pavement or any other type of cap, it's really important to understand where those probes are. For example, like in frost, we've learned up here in Wisconsin and with a lot of our Canadian utilities is that you got to make sure that bar hole is below the frost line, because it's really hard to pull gas, if not impossible, depending on that frost. Same thing with clay. If you have a clay cap that might be like 6 feet down, you got to punch through it, or else you're going to have a much longer time. Here's just a kind of a real brief example of a gas cloud in between a road and some houses, right? One of the things we've learned is when you're pulling gas out from along that house, it's not always best to put the probes right up against the house, because as you are pulling that gas, you're also pulling it from the leak source. So what you want to do is be a little bit away from the houses so that as you pinpoint, you end up where you are. Here's another example of kind of what it looks like as you pinpoint. Eventually, all your probes will read 0 and you'll have one probe still reading gas. That's where you go. Here's some pictures of the VEU being used. This was the original production unit before the latest version we have. Here's Southwest Gas, kind of showing where the probes kind of fit. I like this one because this was up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and the frost was 8 feet deep, and they're actually using a giant post hole digger to get the holes down, and then we'd cap it and drop the probe in the top. And that was a quite large leak that expanded an entire parking lot, and we were able to knock it out within the morning. Some of the accessories, these have all been customer driven, are different types of probe kits, trailer kit for ease of use, sensor calibration kit, the manhole kit. We've had some utilities that like to put a 6 foot by 8 foot cap over like a bell hole, and then they run the manhole kit down there, and that's one way of extracting all remaining gas out of there so that they can close the site down. Spare parts kit and engine silencer. Here's a sample of current users. Since August 31st, 2005, which was when we sold our first unit, we've sold 224 vapor extraction units all across North America, and it's been just an awesome learning experience, and to see how everybody else uses it. And we often will sell the first one as a more emergency kind of response. And then once you get everybody trained up on the pinpointing, that's when you see a lot more use and almost daily use of the machine. So future improvements, of course, I have to be somewhat vague on this because it's all in process, but main thing is it's focusing on smart technology, turning the vapor extraction into something that has live information. What that means is you have to have massive amounts of security around that. Machine learning and ease of use. So think of more automation, stuff like that. It's the route we're headed. And with that, I'd like to hand it back to Phil.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. A lot of good work has gone into the VEU in the last 17 years to make it what it is today. There really are two very important points to this case study, and they're the primary reasons for this session. The first of those is that most great ideas in the natural gas industry come from the people who have their boots on the ground and who work in the trenches every day. As you heard when Marc's bio was read, he has 35 years of experience in working in contracting and utility operations, and he had an idea that has changed the industry. And I've talked to dozens of other folks who have approached me over my time in the industry with their ideas as well. And most of them, if not all of them, come from an operational background. And so that's really important to keep in mind. These products that are coming out and changing what we do on a daily basis are typically not invented in an R&D department or an engineering department. I think the second thing that's important is that finding the right partners to put together with those people who have those ideas or who are those inventors. You need to find a partner that you can trust to design, build, and market your idea, because that's really what's paramount to making it successful. So I would encourage those of you with ideas to reach out to us. Reach out to anyone at EGW, because we are actively looking for new ideas for the natural gas industry, whether it's something VEU related or anything else that's out there. We're very interested in taking a look at it. And I think the reason that's a good idea is that we have relationships with a variety of manufacturers like MBW in the gas industry, and we'll work with you to get your product idea in front of the right manufacturers to really make your idea come to life. That same thing applies to aligning your product with the right group of distributors to get that product into the market. Those are both ultimately important so that your idea can get in the hands of the people that can actively use it on a daily basis. I really want to thank everyone that worked together on the VEU and to make it a reality, and especially Marc for making that phone call back in 2004 and allowing us to partner with him and Atmos Energy on this idea. And also I'd like to thank Andy for all the good work that MBW has done over the years on this product. I can promise all of you that in 2004, none of us involved in this collaboration involving a utility, Atmos Energy, EGW, the distributor, or MBW as the manufacturer, ever thought that we would sell 224 of these units and have them in service across the US, but it happened. And sales today are still extremely strong for this product. Please contact us at EGW with your new product ideas or enhancements to existing ideas if you have them, or if people in your company have them. Who knows? you make that phone call, we talk, maybe your product will become the next one that ultimately changes the industry, like Marc's did back in 2004. That's what we're hoping for. So Mike, with that being said, I think we should open up the phone line, so to speak, to any questions that you might have received.
Yeah, we actually do have a couple of questions. But before I get to the questions, I would point out too, Phil, that EGW now has 2 product managers that's part of their job, and is to help bring some of their knowledge and the knowledge that EGW has collectively with other operators, with manufacturers from all kinds of different places, and bring them together to help solve these sorts of problems in a way that is very, very unique, I think, to EGW. So yeah, question number 1 that I've got is, how does the machine address the water ingestion?
Probably best answered by Andy.
Yeah, we have a water trap at the bottom of the filter. It's you just got to empty it out every once in a while. Sometimes utilities will prefer to use, there's a valve there where you can just drain it out. But yeah, we run into water constantly, and we've had to expand that water trap a little bit over time. And currently that water trap has a kind of a clear cover on it so that you can watch it as it fills up. So.
Okay, great. I've got another one. How often should the unit be serviced and calibrated?
I think I can address that one. The calibration of the unit can be looked at 2 different ways. Some utilities have their own program, Mike, that they want to put in place, and some defer to the manufacturer's recommendation for calibration. Most of our customers have a 30-day calibration, so they calibrate the unit every 30 days. When you buy the VEU, an actual calibration kit comes with it, with the gas detector, which is contained in a box, which is kept separate of the VEU, typically for security reasons. So when you receive the unit, you'll be all set to do the calibrations on whatever interval the utility decides to do it.
Okay. In comparison to the gas tornado, how does the VEU compare to the gas tornado?
Marc, is that one you could take?
Phil, I don't know that I've ever seen a gas tornado.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe the tornado is different.
After I retire.
Right. Okay. I was thinking of the Venturi type. Andy, are you familiar with the tornado?
I am. Part of the issue with the tornado, much like the Venturi, is you're only going to get so much out of one probe or one bar hole, right? And we can hook up to 18 probes on the vapor extraction unit. And in our testing, what we've shown is that each probe is about 1.5 times more powerful than the typical Venturi. Now, the gas tornado itself, I know, is more powerful than a Venturi, but I can't say how much. And you got to remember, it's only coming out of one bar hole. So the difficulty would be it doesn't really help you with pinpointing, and sometimes getting gas out, you need to really cover a large area to get that CFM actually working. So that would be my comments on that one.
Okay, I've got another one. Can the VEU burn off gas, or burn off the gas it is pulling from the ground?
No, we've gotten that question a lot. What it does is it dilutes it and puts it to atmosphere. But no, there's no option to burn it off.
Okay. I think that pretty much is the questions that we have right now. I guess before we move.
Mike?
Yes.
I received a question through an unorthodox method. Someone texted me a question.
Oh.
So if you don't mind, the question was, the question was about maintenance of the unit and whether maintenance was available for the unit. So let me answer that. First of all, there is a prescribed maintenance program that applies to the VEU. It's primarily between the diesel engine and the blower. MBW has taken that and put together a prescribed maintenance program based on the number of hours primarily that the unit is operated, and it does have an hours counter on it. I can't speak for every distributor, MBW distributor, but I do know that EGW we have 2 mobile technicians who travel around our service territory and perform service at the customer's locations on the VEU units, typically on a quarterly basis, and can do it more often in the event that there's a problem or an issue with the units. So we do provide service, and we try to adhere to the manufacturer's recommended intervals for that service.
Very good. Well, we're getting kind of close to our time, so I guess if we don't have any more questions, we can go ahead and wrap up. Before I let you guys go, all 3 of you, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us before we finalize this session?
I'd like to say that it was an absolute great experience working with Mark and Phil and Jeff and everybody. And keep your eyes on MBW. We've got a couple more products that are close to full production. Another one is working with Atmos that came through Phil, and it's the route that we love going to market, is find the experts in the field and let us help.
Mike, I would just like to say that I'm trying to get Mark to come out of retirement to work with me on a few more of these projects, but he seems pretty convinced that he needs to stay in East Texas and enjoy his retirement. Andy, I'd like you to help me on that a little bit to see if we can get Mark to do that. But in all seriousness, I just wanted to tell you guys, like Andy, this has been great. It's been great over the years. We're still doing some fun things with it. But I think we've got more in us. And I think all we need really is some people in the industry to approach us, talk to us about their ideas. We'll sign whatever we need to sign for confidentialities and so forth, but we'd love to work with people to make your ideas into a reality. And didn't know if Mark might have anything he wanted to add before we close out.
Phil, I just want to thank you and Andy both. It was a great experience working with both of y'all and taking just a basic idea and bringing it to completion, and then seeing the wide range of uses that has in the industry. I don't make a penny off any of this anytime one is sold. So my whole intent was to make our industry better, and it has accomplished that, and it gives me a lot of great pride to know that the 3 of us were able to help the industry in this form and fashion. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks a lot.
Well, I just want to say a great big thank you to everybody that joined us today, specifically Phil, Mark, and Andy. We really, really appreciate the time, the insight that you guys shared with us. I learned a lot. And this is for me personally, this is a passion because I love finding solutions to new problems myself. So We want to thank everybody who is in attendance and remind you that if you registered for the session and you attended, you are automatically entered into the drawing for the door prize that I mentioned earlier. You'll be contacted so we know where to send your prize. And, you know, just as a side note, we didn't get a whole bunch of questions in this session, but there's a good chance that you might think of one for some reason later on. We want to make sure that you have a forum that you can get the answer that you're looking for. We've created a special email address. It's on your screen, events@egwusa.com. And if you want to send us your questions in an email format, we'll get those answers back to you just as quickly as we can. You can also call us at the phone number that we have listed up on the screen, or you can call your EGW representative directly. Our territory managers are very knowledgeable and they'd probably be able to help you out pretty well. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We enjoyed spending our time with you. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 9 a.m. That's the first class of the final day. And the title of that class, depending on which track you're on, will be either proper techniques for safely squeezing large diameter PE, polyethylene, or solutions for locating an internal inspection of live polyethylene gas mains. I'd also like to mention that the second session tomorrow, that's the one at 10:45, that'll be our final one of the conference. The title of that one is The Benefits and Pitfalls, Virtual Instructor-Led Training Beyond COVID-19. That will also be a general session, and that one promises to be extremely interesting. We'll be revealing at the end of that one, actually, the winner of the $500 grand prize that Phil alluded to in his opening remarks yesterday. And I've got my fingers crossed. Since I'm the one revealing the winner, don't be surprised if I win. Of course, I'm kidding. Phil has unwaveringly opposed my eligibility, so I promise somebody will be walking away with $500 more in their wallet than what they came to the last session with. So good luck to everybody on that. Don't forget to register for tomorrow's classes if you haven't already done so. You can check out the schedule on our website for all the sessions tomorrow. Just go to egwsolutions.com and click on the conference banner for more information. And that pretty much wraps up for today. We'll see everybody tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mike. Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Marc. Bye, everyone.